as did the people. They changed their religion to Islam. That turned the tide and helped spread the Islamic religion. This also helped them become more popular with their subjects, who were probably like, hey, this Islam thing is pretty cool. So, for example, Mansa Musa was a big guy over there. He was one of the first African Islamic kings who really helped spread the religion, did some pretty good things down there in West Africa. North Africa was dominated by well-trained and the really effective Islamic army. That helped them really spread out. And it was really, here's pretty much the basic area. East Africa, which we'll get to in a minute, is all about trade. Islam spread there through trade. North Africa spread through conquest. Think about kind of the surge of the people in the Arabic Peninsula. If you know geography, the Arabic Peninsula is kind of that big, basically rectangular landmass there. It kind of spread through the tip and into the northern part of Africa, all the way to Spain at some points. And it really spread there. Then Western African people saw it and said, hey, I think this Islamic thing is going to be a good idea. I want to be conquered here. And then, that's pretty much how Islam spread at all those points. In East Africa, there was a ton of trade. So pretty much trade on the East Coast. African and Arab traders traversed kind of the Red Sea. They went back and forth. And if I were to pull up a map here, you could see kind of an incredible kind of linking. They traversed the people in Africa and the people in the what is now Saudi Arabia and the Arabic Peninsula. They kind of traversed all through that, even going as far as places like back and forth through the Red Sea to places along the Swahili coast of Africa. And they went back and forth, and that helped spread the Islamic ideas into a place that really had pretty much traditional African religion, and they were like, whoa, what is this new Islam thing? We have to get onto it. So it spread through trade. They were trading goods and also trading some ideas there in the east coast of Africa, which is called the Swahili coast. Religion was used there for political purposes there, as the growth of Muslim population attracted more people to the coast. Muslim government started in the Swahili coast. Pretty much what happened there was his sultan was kind of like the lord of the place, would appoint two powerful officials called a waziz and an amir. The government included also officials who oversaw trade, tax shipments, and regulated the port, docks, and trade. While this was no golden age, it was pretty much everything was peaceful, everything was all right, but there was no real major advancements that we saw from that point forward. So, conquests in India, as we now move on to the end of the unit, something you may have recently remembered to study at the beginning of February, which is lesson 508 and homework 508 if you go by the system of Miss Jacobs. It was kind of all about Islam and India and the Mughal Empire. Conquests were really a big part in India. A brutal campaign led by Mongolian sultans who converted to Islam. Really brutal army campaigns. 17 campaigns conquered large swaths of northern and northeastern India in 17 aggressive military campaigns. They were aggressive and violent, and they treated the Hindu Indians who were already living in the country as conquered people. And that fight between the influx of Islamic folks and the Hindu folks who are already there, that's a fight that still remains pretty strong today. Although that wasn't totally discussed on the quiz, it will be a big deal. It was one of the parts, the part that we learned about this period of the conflict was one of the Islam in India was one of the more aggressive parts of history. It was not a golden age for sure. It was a really aggressive time and a big time for conflict and use of military there. So peasants were slaughtered at some points. Eventually they were taxed, and the religion at the time was Hindu, so the Islamic conquerors were pretty much hated. They were like, I don't like this. We have our religion. We're good, thank you. We don't need you right now. We don't need you at the moment. But it's okay. So, yeah, they didn't have much of a choice. So let's go over the founding principles here of Islam. So the messenger, the big guy who founded things it was Moses in Israel, and Jesus in Christianity, and it was Muhammad in Islam. It was all about making a self-sustaining society that respects all and follows Islamic law, and you follow the 5 major Muslim principles. Those were a pretty big deal, and one of them was faith. There is only one God, and that is Allah. That was the big point of things. Praying to the God Allah 5 times a day was a big part. The call to prayer, praying in the direction of Mecca, that was very important. 5 times a day was the big deal. Alms was a charitable tax. That was part 3. It was supposed to go to people who were less fortunate than you were. Fasting was not eating for the month of Ramadan. Well, at least for certain times. I do realize you cannot eat for a month. Fasting was during special religious periods. In Ramadan, you cannot eat for the entire month straight, or you would die, but you eat very small portions there. Fasting, was something to show respect to Allah, and during the holy month, where things really went down for the Muslim religion. And then pilgrimage, we mentioned before, the Hajj journey to Mecca. Every Muslim, every Islamic person must take this in their life. They need to go to travel. Pilgrimage, obviously, a religious journey. Take the plane, the train, the car, wherever you happen to live, across the world. Millions of Muslims do this every year. They come, they pray to the Kaaba there in Mecca, which is, for those of you who don't know, like Kaaba, what's he talking about? That is the big black stone thing that has been there for many, many, many years. And here's the thing. After Muhammad died, the Islam split into 2 separate parts. It was around 632 BCE, I believe. And it was the Sunni and the Shiite branches. So the majority was the Sunnis. Well, the Shiites were the minority. The Sunnis, who were the majority, they believed that there should be an elected caliph. Which was in the case we're studying, the Umayyad group that followed the example of Muhammad. That was not exactly Muhammad. And while on the other hand, the Shiites preferred Ali as the next Imam or head of state after Muhammad. So that was the big deal there. They preferred the head of state, called the Imam, while the Caliph was for the Shiites. So those are some terms you may see on the quiz. People are wondering, how should the caliphs be chosen? Well, the Sunnis believed it was by kind of popular election, whoever's following the best set principles of Muhammad, and for Shiites, it was whoever was directly descended from Muhammad. So, and here's a way you can remember Sunnis and Shiites. Sunni, it's like sunny, like everything's happy, we're just going to go with whatever we can take. Shiites were much more stricter. They're like, it's going to be the person directly descended from Muhammad, our prophet, our Lord and Savior, Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad. And the Sunnis are like, all right, majority, sunny, things are good. And that may not be how you remember it, but is how I remember it. So that's okay. But yeah. Caliphs are chosen, by the way, popular election, whoever following the principles set by Muhammad, that's the Sunnis, and the Shiites had whoever, it must be directly descended from Muhammad. That was one of the big differences there that they had. So, where is each country located today? Where is each located today? So, Sunnis, they are 90 to 10% of the 1.6 billion people who follow Muslims. The Islamic religion, 90% of them are Sunnis and 10% are Shiites. You can just get the idea how badly they're kind of outnumbered on the front there. Is one of the, I don't want to get political here, but it's one of the main reasons why you see all that conflict in the Middle East, people fighting in those wars. Some of the main countries are Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Turkey, and Qatar to some degree. While Shiite countries include Iran, Iraq, and Yemen. So now we move to Sikhism. Sikhism, you may remember, we learned about this a little bit recently. And the founder there is Guru Nanak. This was during the part we mentioned before, Islam in India. That it kind of sprung from that. And it was founded by Guru Nanak in northwestern India, which is the upper right tip if you're looking at head on from a map. And the thing is, they believed in only one God, so they were monotheistic. And the idea that the soul experienced multiple lives, a connection kind of to Hinduism and reincarnation there. So that's a connection you may be asked on the test. Connection to Hinduism and reincarnation there. The idea the soul experienced kind of multiple lives. To merge with God, you don't have to live a life of celibacy and not starting family or anything like that, or swear off speaking or anything like that. But instead, you have to remove yourself from temptation. Don't do bad things, pretty much, and live an honest life. Don't be a cheater. Don't try to be a con man, anything like that. Sikhism condemns all those blind rituals, as they call it, like fasting, visiting places of pilgrimage, superstitions, worship of the dead, idol worship. For example, you may hear a little bit of tones of Islam there, such as visiting places of pilgrimage. That was a big Islamic thing with the Hajj and the trip to Mecca. Superstitions, many other religions, and worship the dead. That was what people were doing in the Bedouin area before Islam. And, of course, idol worship also believed, not very popular, with the Sikhs as well. So they also believe those pretty nice, kind of ahead of their time, that all that all people, not just Sikhs, are equal under God. So pretty much everyone is equal. No kind of discrimination is allowed. And you may remember that article from the Greeley Tribune back in 2000 that was in one of the lessons, I believe. I don't know although I do believe it's so, that every global teacher gives out the same lessons, but there could be, because there was a Tribune article that mentioned, kind of laid out the beliefs of Sikhism, and that was one of the things mentioned in there. So some of the main practices are that there is uncut hair. If you are a Sikh person, you cannot touch a hair on your body. You gotta have long hair that's sometimes kind of like wrapped up in a turban. That is kind of the headdress of cloth that you see some people wearing. And again, the good thing is the important thing is you cannot call these people Muslim, because it's kind of weird. It's kind of awkward, definitely. It's kind of uncomfortable, to say the least. And you can't really call them Hindu either, because if not, they don't want to be confused with any of that stuff. They're Sikhs, and they wrap their head in the turban. You cannot touch a single one of their... they cannot touch a single hair on their head. They can't trim their eyebrows. They can't cut their hair. They have super long beards, some of them, and super long hair, but they just keep it up in the turban for the most part. Women cannot trim their eyebrows or anything else like that. It is very, very important. It's called the kesh, uncut hair. It kind of represents holiness, strength, one with your body. Kara, you may see some people in the Sikh religion wearing a steel bracelet, which means a kind of restraint and gentility. Kanga, which is a wooden comb, which means a clean mind and body, taking care of the body God has given you. And kasha, which is cotton underwear, which is chastity, which means pretty much not being promiscuous, not being like, hey, how are you doing? Like, what's up? And they're just going to be like, no, be very serious, you know? So, all right, Kirpan is a steel sword. It's about the defense of good, and normally this steel sword is worn by the Khalsa class of soldier saints, which are pretty much the best followers of Sikhism, and it was originated out of northwestern India and founded by Guru Nanak, who passed that part of the religion down to 7 other gurus who all eventually died out. Last one died out in like the 1700s, I believe. But don't quote me on that, because I don't think you need to know that for the quiz. All right, so we move on. Just to give you the idea of the format of the quiz here. So 60 points for the quiz, 20 multiple choice, 5 on this map here, 5 on the map, and there is 1 DBQ paragraph, everyone. That's going to be big. So you got to remember that DBQ paragraph. So here's what you need to be familiar with the following on the map. If you were wondering where I'm getting this information from, I'm getting it from an announcement set out, where on the bottom there's a link, and it says this. So pretty much, it's all you're going to be familiar with: Spain, Africa, Egypt, Asia, and Arabia, Europe, Persia. Those are going to be all places on the map. Spain, Africa, Egypt, Arabia, and Persia are all places that Islam spread. Asia was also, to some degree, was spread there. In Europe, with Spain, it was also spread there as well. Red Sea, the Mediterranean Sea, Arabian Sea, Black Sea, Indian Ocean, Atlantic Ocean, Persian Gulf, Gulf of Guinea, Indus River, Niger River, and the Nile River. Those are places, those bodies of water you need to be familiar with. Mecca, Medina, and by the way, Mecca is where the center of Islam is. It's where the Kaaba is, where the pilgrimage takes place. Medina is where kind of the